Today we will be reviewing the training for the SMI evaluation and determination process for general mental health providers. Some of the goals of today's training are just to clarify the SMI determination process and to assist providers in completing a comprehensive and complete application so that an accurate determination can be made for members in a timely manner. We also want to help ensure that the appropriate individuals are determined SMI and answer any questions that providers might have about the evaluation and determination process. In the hopes of getting packets submitted correctly, we're hoping to avoid unnecessary delays in the treatment for those determined to be SMI. A review of some of the numbers. As of 10/1, CRN will be going statewide, and at that time, all of our staff is currently hired. We have 10 psychologists in anticipation of making about 13,000 SMI determinations a year. At this time, we're doing between 500 to 600 a month, and so we expect that number to double when we go statewide. We have 11 eligibility coordinators processing the packet, 8 grievance specialists, 1 program manager, 1 business analyst, 1 administrative assistant, 1 chief medical officer, and 1 grievance administrator. All these staff process, as I said before, about 13,000, or will be processing about 13,000 SMI determinations, about 1,700 appeals, and 50 state hearings. We will have offices, our main office is located in Tempe, and we will have offices in Tucson and Flagstaff. Those offices mostly processing appeals, but will handle some of the determinations as well. And then we will have 28 teleconferencing locations across the state of Arizona. As we just discussed, some of the numbers of applicant referrals received, applicant packets that we've received just over the last year since March. The numbers you can see vary from 512 to 591. So we had some variances, but we're processing about 500 plus packets a month at this time, again with expectation of about doubling once we go statewide. While the majority of our packets we receive are from one provider, Crisis Preparation and Recovery, our general mental health providers do submit a significant amount of packets, and historically they have been problematic, so we're just trying to get everybody on the same page and make sure that our packets are as well put together as possible so that our doctors can make the best decisions they can in a timely manner. So that being said, over the last 2 months, during July and August, we received about 182 general mental health packets, and out of these 182, 97 of those had issues requiring corrections and follow-up with providers. So in the hopes of decreasing that number, we're going to go over today what a complete packet consists of in terms of what CRN requires. So we'll go into more detail on each one of these forms, but a basic packet that CRN would require would need to consist of a consent for assessment for level of care, the waiver of 3-day determination, releases of information if applicable, the SMI determination form or 3.10.1 form, a demographic sheet, and the core assessment. REBA requirements vary and are not specifically audited for by CRN, but please be aware that you may be audited for these by the state as well as your REBA, so please contact the REBA for any additional documentation that may need to be included. We're going to start with the consent for assessment for level of care, since this is one of the most important forms in terms of our process. Without this form signed and dated appropriately, we cannot process the packet. So it's important to note that this form starts our timeline and not the date on the SMI determination form or the 3.10.1 form. ADHS requirement is that providers submit the completed packet to CRN within 1 business day from the date of this consent. The client needs to both initial the appropriate line in addition to signing the form. There are 3 options on this form that you can notice. The top one should be the only one that CRN is receiving, as it says that I want to be assessed and have a determination made about my eligibility for SMI services. The other 2 options are for general mental health services only and for clients who have been previously determined SMI. CRN does not process the previously SMI and would not receive a packet that requests general mental health services only. So I've highlighted that here, the area that we need to have initialed and then where we would need a signature at the bottom. Again, please remember that the packet should be submitted to CRN within 1 business day of this date. If the client has a legal guardian, they must be the ones to initial and sign this form. A client who is not yet 18 cannot consent, so please assure that you're submitting with enough time for a decision to be made prior to the client's 18th birthday. You can absolutely discuss the process with them, but the guardian ultimately is the one that needs to consent and provide their initials and signature. The next form is the waiver of 3-day determination form. And this is where we get our pended status. So it's important to note that a decision is made within 3 days of submission, and that decision can be either SMI, non-SMI, or for the doctor to pend the case for 20 or 90 days as indicated by the client on the form. If the client has a treatment history outside of your agency, it's always going to be in their best interest to allow the 20-day pend, even if they don't have additional records. But if they do have additional records, please be sure to include releases of information. We also use the 20-day pend for face-to-face evaluations as well as staffings with providers. So again, it's always going to be in the client's best interest to choose 20 days. The best way to present this to your clients is that the doctors will look at the chart on the third day, and the only time they will use the pend option is if they're going to say no on that third day and they feel that they could benefit from having additional information either by meeting with the client in person, staffing the case, or receiving additional records. The 90-day or EEP Extended Evaluation Program is utilized for clients currently in Maricopa County as a specific program through crisis preparation and recovery to address any substance abuse diagnosis or concerns. And that would be a current substance abuse diagnosis or concern. So the clients are enrolled in a program where they participate for a period of 90 days, including drug screens, and they participate in substance abuse services. At the end of the 90 days, CRN receives a summary, assuming the client participates, of what services they participated in, as well as the urinalysis drug screens. It's important to note that anybody under the age of 18 cannot participate in this program, and so for all of the kids under 18, you would not utilize this option. You would only utilize either the 3 days or the 20 days. The clients can choose, above 18, can choose 20 or 90 days, allowing the doctor more options to pend as they choose. They don't always need to utilize the extended evaluation program, but if they do have a current substance use diagnosis, it's always beneficial to allow for that option if needed. Please make sure that the client is checking the appropriate box and having the client sign. Also, you should be signing as the evaluator, indicating that you did review these options with the clients in detail and explained to them what their options are and how that might impact their decision ultimately as far as the timelines go. The releases of information that we include are specific to CRN. We do prefer that you use ours as it is easier for us to get records, especially from hospitals. If the client has elected for pen for records, you would need to include a release of information for any previous treating provider the client wants us to request records from. Please fill this out as best as possible to the best of your ability, including as much detail as possible. Full name as opposed to just Dr. Smith, address and phone number if you have it, otherwise just as much detail as you can, city, state, any information that would help us get those records. We do have a records department dedicated to locating and sending out these records requests, and they have been fairly successful in doing so, and that has helped many of our doctors make decisions that might have been a no, and they changed their decision based on the records that they received. So it is very helpful for us to have these. Another utilization for the ROIs is for emergency contact, family member, friend, or any other person the client would like to be involved in their care. A good rule of thumb is if you need an ROI to speak to them, we would also need our own ROI to speak with them. So please include this if the client does have family members or other people that they would like us to communicate with. The SMI determination form 3.10.1 form can be completed by a BHT level staff, but must be signed by both the completing evaluator as well as the BHP level staff who has reviewed the chart. This is just an example of the form. Each agency has kind of a varied version of this form, and that's fine. You just need to submit one, but just please make sure it is filled out correctly. If you're using this specific form, please indicate the diagnosis that you're submitting under, the qualifying diagnosis you're submitting under, and provide a detailed description of that diagnosis in section 1A. That specific information should include symptoms that are specific to the client and, again, the qualifying diagnosis that you're submitting under or multiple diagnoses, however many the client has. If there is no qualifying diagnosis, you would also indicate that in section 1A. However, please do not leave this blank. Section 2 starts the functional criteria. There are 3 sections, section 2A, 2B, and 2C. These categories must be related back to the qualifying diagnosis that you are submitting under. So you would check all applicable criteria in categories 2A, 2B, and 2C. And for every functional criteria checked, you would want to provide a description in the box below with examples specific to the client of how they meet those. The next section, section 3, is risk of deterioration, which should be used only for clients who do not currently meet functional criteria. If you've checked any of the functional criteria in A, B, or C, you would not use the risk of deterioration. You would explain why you're using risk here only if no functional criteria are met, otherwise the section should be blank. The assessor should print, sign, and clearly list credentials along with the BHP if necessary. Please assure that the BHP signature is clear enough to read the credentials so that we can assure that a BHP has reviewed and is signing that they have reviewed this document. Section 2 is the final serious mental illness eligibility determination and is a form that is completed by CRN. You can go ahead and leave this blank, including the signature, and again, you only need to submit one version of this form. This is more of just an FYI, as it's often filled out. It's just extra work for people that doesn't need to be done. So the final determination will be handled by CRN on our form in our electronic health record. The core assessment the chart cannot be processed without a current core assessment. Any ADHS core assessment that's been approved can be submitted, and it does need to be updated if completed more than 6 months from the date of submission. Even if it's 1 to 2 days from the date of submission, it does need to be updated, and it really should be updated if there's been any significant changes since the last assessment, even if that last assessment was a couple of months ago. We do ask that you consider updating it at each SMI determination, regardless of when the last assessment was. But again, that requirement is 6 months from the date of submission. The assessment cannot be a Part E or annual update, and again, does need to be any ADHS approved core assessment, comprehensive assessment, intake assessment, whatever language your agency uses. It does need to be the more comprehensive assessment because all of that information is helpful for our doctors in making their ultimate decision and getting a very clear current clinical picture of the client. The next form is the demographic form. This form is helpful in creating the client's profile for CRN. If an ER contact is provided, please also include an ROI for that person. If the guardian is checked yes for an adult, please include the guardianship letters. Power of attorney can only be accepted in cases where a physician statement documenting incapacitation is also attached. And again, we cannot process if we do not have specifically the letters of guardianship for an adult. If the client is homeless but has a mailing address, please provide this for notices. CRN primary form of communication with our clients, other than phone calls, would be to send a notification that the packet is received and is in process, as well as notifying them once a decision is made. This notice also includes the client's appeals rights, so any address that we could get for them would be really helpful in terms of communicating these decisions with them. So again, if the client's homeless but has a mailing address, please provide this, including if they want to use the homeless address in Maricopa County, anything that we could send them a notice to. If you're in a county that allows for the client to have a site preference, please indicate that here. If they do not have a site preference, just go ahead and indicate that on the form. Some clients want to be closer to their home address, some to their work. There's a lot of different reasons why they might have a site preference. So we would just ask that you indicate that here. Or again, if they don't, just go ahead and put no preference. The SMI submission portal should be the primary form of submission for all providers. We would ask that you contact the number 602-845-3580 for any assistance before submitting via fax. It's helpful if you can provide any screenshots with your issue, and you can email those directly to myself, or again, use the phone number to contact me, and I can walk you through the process. The portal allows for better tracking for us and a confirmation for providers. Once you hit submit, everything will go through to our portal, and once we receive it, you will receive an immediate confirmation stating that your submission has been successful, and it will provide you with a confirmation code that you can later use to communicate with CRN to discuss whether or not there's any issues with the packet or if there's any issues with the receipt of the packet. So for new submissions, you would fill out all the fields and attach any files. If you have attached the file successfully, you can see it here in the attached section where it will list the name of your attachment. This information is very important that you fill out as accurately as possible. A lot of agencies have errors in completing this documentation, making sure names are spelled correctly, date of births are entered correctly, and then the dates need to be very specific. So the dates we're looking for here, the date the SMI eval request was received would be the date that the SMI eval was requested by client, family, or treating provider. So whoever requested the initial SMI determination be completed, that would be the date that goes here. So you're not required as general mental health providers to document the time that you completed it unless you're providing a service to an inpatient client. But for the most part, general mental health providers are not required to document the time. However, you do need to enter something for the portal to accept it. So it does need to be in our format here as it's indicated here. And if you forget that, you can always kind of hover over it and it will give you that instruction. The date the SMI eval request was completed should be the date that the client signed the consent. So it's not the date you're submitting, but again, the date that the client signed the consent. And again, that time is not required, but you would just put in a time so that the portal will accept it. If you have the time, great. Otherwise, you just put something in here so that we can have the portal accept the time. Make sure that you're indicating the waiver of 3-day determination, what the client chose. There are the options for 3 days, 20 days, or 90 days. And again, just make sure that your attachments have successfully attached here. You may notice that if you hit submit and they're not fully attached, you will get an error message that says, your files have not fully attached. Would you like to submit anyway? If you do hit submit at that point, your file will come through without attachments, and we'll have to contact you to get those through an update. You do have the option to do either new submission or update to previous submission. If we are asking you to resubmit something to us, you're going to want to choose update and enter all this information again. You would then choose your agency name from the provider prefill, and that will automatically prefill the assessor section. The provider contact would be who you would like us to contact if there is an issue with the packet. So if that is not the evaluator, please don't put the evaluator name here. Depending on your agency, you may have medical records submit for you. Whoever you would like to, again, have that communication with, if there's an issue with the packet, this would be the phone number or the email that we would contact in order to get the packet errors corrected or the information that we're missing. This email will also receive the confirmation code at the beginning of the submission, as well as the notification of decision at the end of our determination process. So keep that in mind again and just put whoever you want getting those notifications. We can actually go through, I have the portal up here. We can go through and sort of again see the SMI submission portal that we have here. There's a couple of different options at the top. Our forms are always available online. You can find them here and you can download them. They also have reminders of our specific timelines here, the consent for assessment needing to be signed and dated within 1 business day of submission. And again, you have all the options to download these forms and just receive those reminders on here. The portal is here, and again, you're just going to want to enter the information. As you see here, there's the options for the different REVAs, and then you'd want to enter all the information that you have on the client. The requirements, the first name, last name, date of birth, the date that the eval request was received, and the time. And again, that's where you can see the format that it needs to be in. And then attaching is pretty easy. You can either just choose your attachments there, or you can drag files into it. And you can see here I have attached my file, and I would choose my provider and enter my information. And then I would hit submit, and I'll get a message that the submission was successfully sent. So that means that CRN will receive the packet from there, and I will get a confirmation code in my email that tells me that the packet has been received and informs me of what my confirmation code is. So it's a pretty simple process, but again, if you ever need assistance with it, we're more than happy to walk you through it. So really the last thing is just the additional tips. Our doctors often wish to staff with the evaluator any current treating providers, so including the names and contacts as much as possible, direct extensions, direct lines of these people is helpful so that they can make those phone calls. They usually will leave a message if they're not able to reach you, so please just give them a call back when you're able to do that. And that's helpful in them, hearing your side of it and getting you to be able to make a case for your client. If you miss a phone call from them and it's the next day, please go ahead and give them a call back anyway. They can modify their decision if the information that you have is helpful in allowing them to do so. They may do that. So it's always a good idea to return the calls as timely as possible. But if you're not able to get in touch with them, just go ahead and give them a call back either way. You can submit as many attachments as you need to through the portal. Some agencies find it helpful to split up their attachments into smaller files. They find it quicker that way. That's totally fine. However many you need to attach is fine. As far as additional documentation goes, providers should be submitting about 6 months of clinically relevant documentation, so meaning psychiatric progress notes, therapy notes, assessments, if applicable. Obviously, if you've had a recent client who's just had an intake, you may not have those documents. However, if you have a client you've been seeing for 10 years, we wouldn't necessarily need all of their documentation. So 6 months is about a good rule of thumb for that. If we need more documentation, we will request that from you at a later time. And then again, if you could just limit it to clinically relevant documentation for the purposes of, not adding things that we may not be in support of making a decision, case management notes that are not really relevant, things like that can just be distracting to the more important documentation, again, as far as psychiatric notes, therapy notes, and things like that. Our main number is listed here. You can contact our main number, or my contact information is listed on the website as well. Again, we just saw the website where you can access tips on completing the SMI determination, evaluations, reminders on timelines. You can download the required forms and just any facts about the SMI determination process that you may need in instructing clients on why you're recommending this or what the benefits might be. So if you do have any questions, you're more than welcome to contact us at our main number, or you can try to access those answers on our website as well. And that covers all of the training requirements today. And again, you have the phone number and website to access any questions that you might have. And hopefully, this training you'll have access to as well, so you can review anytime that you feel like you need that. Thank you.